Hi everyone, I'm Deb. Today I'm going to show you how I transfer a design I've drawn on newsprint onto my clay. This is called a monoprint transfer, not because it's only one color, but because it's for one-time use. But first, when I see a sign that says no public restrooms, I know that's the bathroom for me. I hate to pee in public.
First, I start with my template. This is made from craft foam. I draw a circle around it on newsprint so I know where to contain my design. This is a squeeze bottle I bought on Amazon, and I've just added a blue and black mixture of underglaze, watered it down to an inky-like consistency. Sometimes it was too liquidy, sometimes it was too thick. I just had to figure it out, but this is really the first time I am using this. I just previously have used a paintbrush. So sometimes I test it out on the side of the paper to think if it's going to come out in a big globule or it doesn't come out at all. These are just cheap ones I bought on Amazon, so if this is something I like, I might invest in a fancier version. I think the company that makes the nicer ones is pronounced Seam, X-I-E-M. So here I'm just drawing with my underglaze mixture onto the newsprint. You could do this on newspaper also. I just buy these on Amazon. It's an 11 by 17 piece of paper, and normally when you first draw something, that is your background. This is a transfer method, so this will be my foreground. So it will become more clear as we finish the design and transfer it onto the clay. Another important thing to know is I must wait until this layer dries until I move on and color in anything else. The colors will just bleed into each other if I don't wait. In this picture, it's already dried. It looks lighter, it's almost a chalky-like consistency. I could keep this design for a year. Here I'm adding some pink to my jar and I'm adding some water. And I'm gonna fill in some little parts of the flower with this. Since the blue of my drawing is dry, I can do this. But I won't be able to fill in the petals until these little bits of pink I'm adding are also dry. Here, I'm using a hairdryer to speed this along, but I don't usually do this. I have a bunch of them going at one time and I move on, or I'm just doing something else in the studio while this part dries. So now that this is dry, I can add color to my petals. I won't be able to do my leaves until the petal is dry because they will be touching and you will see the water spreads out on the paper. There's water in the underglaze, so as I paint it, it's seeping into the paper and it's going to spread. So until that water spread is no longer there, I can't add my next color. I can do these little buds of flowers here. Here, look, I'm using a paintbrush so you can see. It's funny because sometimes I screen print onto my newsprint, and for that, I need to really thicken my underglaze. But for this technique, I need to water it down. And a lot of times I will do both. It's a process. So now I'm taking my red that I just colored in my little buds in. I'm gonna add a little bit of black and water it down, and now it makes like a purple, and I'm gonna paint my leaves this purple. And I don't need to use the squeeze bottle, I'm using a paintbrush. I can use the squeeze bottle if I want. And when this dries, if I feel like it's too watery and I see the paper through it, I can add a second layer, but I will wait until it's completely dry to do that. So here I'm using the lid, and that is not a great practice because you might clog up the grooves of your underglaze container and it might be hard to get a good seal, or it might not even close well and it might dry out your underglazes. So don't follow my example. Once this design is done, I can leave this for a year. I do not have to transfer it right away. But when I am ready to transfer it, I need to rehydrate it in some way. So I like to re-wet this. This is a pink mixture I've just made. This is an underglaze, but you could use many different things. You could use a casting slip. You can use an engobe. And so right now I'm kind of just trying to glide the largest paintbrush I have, glide it over the design. I kind of want one even layer because I want it to dry at the same time, because it's very wet here, as you can see when it goes on, but as soon as it stops being wet is the time to transfer it. So you see it's wet, it's wet, it's wet here. I've let it sit. It's mostly dry. It's mostly dry. Okay, so I'm just going to try to turn this over onto my clay, the paint side down onto my clay. I'm going to try to get it so there is no wrinkles, and I'm just going to lay it down, and I'm going to start ribbing from the center, and I'm going to pull out with a soft silicone rib. If it hasn't been like set down yet, I could kind of finagle any wrinkles out and then set it down. But once I've started ribbing it, this is it. This is where the design is going to be. So you can see there are drier parts to this where you don't see the design come through anymore. So I could take my sponge and tamp it down and then re-rib it. But as long as I peel this paper up slowly, I can always place it back down if my whole design hasn't transferred fully through. You'll see what I mean when I start to peel it up. We're peeling. Okay, I can place this back down if I wanted to get some more of the design. I actually like the rustic look of this, but sometimes I will put it back down and just try to get an extra piece of the rib. I'll use my sponge, I'll use the rib again. But this is why I use transfer prints and design it like this, because I like when it doesn't fully transfer through. I love seeing this dark clay body come through. Some people want perfect results. This technique might not be for you. As long as I haven't pulled the paper up fully, I can still place it back down and it will land in the exact same place. And I can wet it a little bit with a sponge and re-rib it. The last thing I do is use a brayer to make sure my design has fully transferred to the clay. Okay, so now I've decided I like my design. I've peeled the paper up slowly, and I take my template and I decide where I want to lay it, because my design might be a little bigger, hopefully, than my template. Okay, so now I cut it out with a knife or a pin tool. I'm not gonna discard the rest of the clay because I'm gonna use this little bit extra for my foot. And here is my plate. I have a mold. I made this out of clay and it's just bisqued, and I will never glaze it. And this is how I can be consistent and make the same size plate. I use the template and I use this mold, and then all my plates will match. I'm just folding my clay around the mold. I'm ribbing it. I'm going around the center, I'm going around the sides, I'm realigning the clay particles, I'm compressing the clay. I am going to leave it on this bisque mold until it is dry enough and comes off on its own, but holds its shape. I want my clay to hold its shape, but I don't want to leave it on all night. Right now, I can start to add my foot. I have this tool. It looks just like a corn cob holder, but the sides are sanded and rounded, but you could probably make your own if you want to sand it. I happened to buy this, I think it was $4 at GR Pottery Forms. So I'm gonna rib around my clay. I'm going to rib the underside of my foot, then I will start attaching my foot. I pinch it down as I move along, and it's actually growing a little bit. When my foot has come full circle, I make sure to overlap the pieces and cut through both parts of the foot. I can remove the bottom from one, the top from the other, and score these pieces to make my foot. I like to use this silicone clay tool. It's a rubber-tipped tool, And I like to run this around anytime I join two pieces together. So along my seam line here, it just helps to close it up. I also can use my finger for this to clear any score lines away, but this rubber tipped tool, try to get a firm one, is an amazing, amazing tool. I like to finish this off by making a little underglaze heart, and when this dries, I will carve my name into it. Okay, so I am ready to remove my plate from the mold. It is holding its shape, and I will just go over the rim and smooth it out. Sometimes I like to put a piece of plastic over my finger and use that as if it were a silicone rib, and that smooths out my edges pretty nice. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know if you have any questions, and I will try to answer them. Bye. Olive Garden. Never-ending pasta. You want it to end. Their pasta sucks.